Hello, everyone. This is the second virtual table of the Lamb Stand, which will be the employee canteen and neighborhood cafe associated with Wear Wool New London, which is an ecological wool fashion venture. And so today we're eating and talking about a lot of things, but including what we made based on the cooking video I did, which started with a roast leg of lamb and ended up with a curried lamb with toppings. My two guests today are Muffin Burgess, who's an ethnobotanist living in Tucson, Arizona, and an expert on the Sonoran Desert, and she's including some foods and seeds and nuts from the desert as her toppings, which is kind of cool. And my other guest is Tohono Tobiasson. Did I get that right? Tobiasson, sorry, who is one of the leaders of the wool movement, wool fashion movement, sustainable wool, sustainable food movement in Scandinavia. And she's coming to us from her cabin in Norway, which she's going to show us a little bit of, because it's kind of like wool world. And not being a great fan of curry, she made instead the national dish of Norway, which is kind of a mutton stew with cabbage, which is really cool. I made some this week. It's delicious. And she's also, I think, going to show us the leftovers of a cured lamb that's kind of like prosciutto with a leg of lamb. So this dish of curried lamb with toppings was, especially in the 50s and 60s, it was kind of a common thing. And both Muffin and I experienced it in our family. In my case, it was every Christmas and every Easter, we had a leg of lamb the evening, and then the next day we had a curry with toppings for brunch that was made from basically just the leftover gravy, the leftover lamb, and some curry powder. Now, when I did the cooking video, I actually made a real curry, partly because I really screwed up in doing the leg of lamb. I did it on aluminum foil, which was really stupid because you don't get the pan drippings and the fond, so the gravy ends up being tasteless, so you can't do anything with that. But this time, I roasted the leg of lamb exactly the way my mother did. Put it in 450, immediately turn it down to 350, and then cook it till it gets to your desired temperature. But when I did the cooking video, I got a leg of lamb from a farm in Watertown from Karen Kalinauskas, and that was the lamb I used for the cooking video. For this one, I got lamb from Olympia Farm in Guilford. And Ann McIntyre, who's the owner of the farm, gave me a recipe where you put a bunch of olive oil and garlic and salt and rosemary in a plastic bag with the frozen leg of lamb. In this case, I had a frozen leg of lamb. And it marinates as it thaws out over 5 days, which was kind of cool. I mean, it really got infused with the garlic. And I just took all the marinade and everything and just put that in the roasting pan. So this gravy that I got has this kind of roasted garlic in it and roasted rosemary in it. But basically then I just did what my mother did. I took the gravy, added some curry powder, and threw the leftover lamb in. And that was the curried lamb. And it's really good. I think it's better than the quote unquote real curry I made in the cooking video. So I'm just going to show you. I did decide, I might, growing up, my mother would do crumbled bacon, hard-boiled eggs, scallions, peanuts, and raisins. That was her toppings. Kind of, whatever, kind of ordinary. So Muffin's gonna kind of blow you away with her toppings, but these are mine. And what I did was pecans that I tossed in olive oil and maple syrup and salt and cayenne pepper, then roasted in a 375 oven for 12 minutes. So that's like a sweet and savory mouth bite all by itself. Then I put mango, both fresh mango and mango chutney, and then kumquats sliced. and dried cranberries and roasted coconut. So it's kind of, the lamb is very savory. Most of the toppings are sweet. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Maybe knowing where Muffin was going, I chose to do colors of the Southwest. I'm not sure. But anyway, I like it. It's kind of pretty. And I hope it tastes good. I'll find out. So Muffin, what did you do?
Okay, well, I'm speaking to you from the very sunny, very warm Southwest. It's going to close to 80 degrees Fahrenheit today. we pay for it in the summertime. But I'm here in the land of the Tohono O'odham people, the indigenous people. And so I've learned a lot from them. So a lot of what I share today was inspired by elders of the Tohono O'odham Nation who took me under their wing a long time ago. It's not fair that you're eating. You're making us so hungry. Oh gosh.
You get your turn.
Okay. Do you want me to show? Oh, I should start by saying that our backgrounds, Kip, sounds so similar because in the 40s and 50s, my mom was doing the very same thing. It was the sacrificial lamb, the leg of lamb that we always had at Christmas and Easter. And then usually she would pause for a couple of days before she prepared the curried lamb. But similar in what you say about the side dishes, the toppings. The same with my family, but I've used those as sort of the jumping off points to garner categories of toppings to suggest to you. And I can share books with everybody if you want to explore sources of some of these foods. A number of them I've gotten right from my own garden, which is still active in the winter time. We have a winter garden and a summer garden in Tucson. But many of the things also are fruits and nuts of the desert, berries that I've gathered out in the wild and in its right season. People think of the desert as being this wasteland, but really in its times, there are waves of plenty. And traditional people knew for that week or two when a certain plant was ripe and ready, they would all harvest together and put it up in one way or another, usually drying, or sometimes if it's sweet, boiling it down to concentrate the sugars. But okay, do you want me to show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So inspired by, well, the first thing was that Mom always had as a topping was ginger. Okay, so
cool.
Inspired by that, I have harvested from our own Meyer lemon tree, my grapefruit tree, and this unusual fruit. Can you see that? It's called a sweet lime. It's Citrus limetta is the scientific name. Has a sort of a globular shape with a nipple on it, but it is the most incredible citrus you ever tasted and sniffed. It's got a bouquet. It's got a sweetness that's—
Say the name again.
It's a sweet lime.
Sweet lime, okay.
Sweet lime, and hyphenated sometimes. Anyway, I candied the rind, this fragrant rind of the sweet lime, and my grapefruit rind, and my Meyer lemon, and I made all sorts of candied,
cool,
crystallized fruit rind. Then, okay, so inspired by the what we both, Kip and I, feel is the norm of toppings like raisins and peanuts. Let's go with fruits. I harvested, this is a fruit that I froze actually, from the giant saguaro cactus. You have to use a long pole to harvest it. My native mentor taught me how to do that. But the inside of the fruit, I don't know if you can see that very well, it's like a fig, and it's dried with the crunchy seeds, and then and sweet pulp surrounding it.
Wow.
It's,
Almost like pomegranate.
pardon?
Almost like pomegranate.
Even, well, it's concentrated the way a
Okay.
fig would be. Then the other thing that's growing a lot, it was introduced by the Spanish missionaries 400 years ago in Tucson, is, well, actually it came more popularly with the Chinese when they came to help with the railroad in the 1880s. This is a jujube, and it's like a dry, crunchy date. They call it a Chinese date, but it has more of a crunch to it. And that makes a nice a textural interest as well in your toppings. I've also, I would suggest that wherever you are, you could use the berries at hand. I've got, actually, these are rowan berries sent from a friend in the Northwest, but if you're in the British Isles, or maybe even in Scandinavia, does rowan, the sorbus, grow there? Tuna? Okay, so in place of peanuts, I harvested, I don't know if you can see this very well. These are tiny little acorns.
Mm.
And it's the emery oak acorn specifically, and the nut meats are hard to extract, but they are fabulous. They have a bitterness to them that's a wonderful contrast with the curry.
Mm.
And it's the only acorn that I know of anywhere on the planet that you don't have to leach of its tannins before you eat it. It falls to the ground and is roasted on the ground, essentially. Another fabulous nut that I like to use with my curry is the piñon nut. And
Oh.
of course, we can get those at Trader Joe's now. They probably are from the stone pine in Italy, but our local one, we can harvest as soon as the first frost hits. We go up into the mountains. Okay, the other component, of course, we have to have is chutney, any kind of chutney. And I've learned a lot from a friend from Calcutta, a dear friend, and in like any sauce goes, and it's called chutney in India. I made out of my local, this is the native onion, Iitoi's onion from the indigenous people, probably introduced by Spanish 400 years ago. But with that and heirloom garlic and mint from my garden, I made what's like a chimichurri sauce, inspired from South America, but it's really the same as a chutney. It's, oh my gosh, I've got garlic, the chives, well, actually they aren't chives so much as like a small shallot, Iitoi's onion, a number of cilantro, and some olive oil and wine vinegar. And it's
We're all coming over.
It's divine. Okay, then I did a variation on my mom's peach mango chutney. I added the fruit of the barrel cactus, and I just harvested this.
Wow. All this is going to go on this lamb curry, right?
Well, you don't have to do it all at once. You can.
It's not going to be much curry under there.
I like to pick and choose one from each category. You know what I mean?
Right.
Inside this barrel cactus fruit, there are a mass of black, crunchy, wonderful, very healthful seeds. And a friend has made a mustard. It's not glorious to look at, but oh gosh, it's so good. A mustard with the seeds and other mustard spices that make an interesting complement. I also had to share this. I wore the right color in case I drop it on myself. But this is my East meets West chutney. It's more of a conserve with cranberries from the East Coast, and then oranges from my neighbor's tree, and the sweet lime again, with peel as well as the juice of the sweet lime. So essentially it's just a glorified cranberry sauce, but it's one of my favorite. I also have made a mesquite conserve. These are beans of the screw bean mesquite, amazing plant, and the velvet mesquite pods. And I boiled those down to make a sweet syrup. The pulp around the seeds is just full of complex carbs and sweet carbs. And I've made a conserve with quince, which also was introduced here and does very well, membrillo. And that's another sauce. Can I give you a few more ideas? A couple more ideas.
Okay.
I pickled local eggs to sprinkle on top, and we made our own olives from a tree in a friend's yard. It's an easy recipe with using kosher salt, but a lot of time and effort. And then, ta-da, this, if the curry sauce that you've already made is not hot enough, I use this in my curry. These tiny little beads are the great grandmother of all chili peppers.
Wow.
Except the Tabasco peppers. This is chiltepin, the chiltepin pepper. The native name for it is almost onomatopoetic. It's it's like and then of course you have to pair your your dish with some local mezcal. This was double distilled from its bootleg from the century plant that blooms only once, every 25 years. So those are some ideas to share.
Wow. Blow me away. So are you going to put some of that on a curry, or you just have those as ideas?
Oh, I've experimented with Rod this week.
Right. Today, are you putting those toppings on a curry today, or yes.
I've got my curry here with my sprig of rosemary from the
right.
from the yard.
And now you're gonna make up a lamb curry sundae.
Exactly.
Well, we'll let you do that and switch over to tuna and show us what you got.
So I've been doing this stew all day today. So as you can see, can you see the stew?
Sort of.
Yeah, okay. So it's been there all day. And now we need to get out the beer and the akkevitt, because that's what we're going to.
Tell folks what's in the stew.
Okay. The stew is based on, it should be based on mutton, but because there's so little mutton meat around now, it's mainly based on lamb. This is the stew, and it's based on lamb. And the main thing is that you just stack the mutton, the cabbage, the mutton, the cabbage, you stack it, and it's a very simple stew. So the whole idea is that you just use the very fresh meat and the cabbage, and you can put in carrots, for example, to add some more flavor. But it's salt, pepper, and flour and water. That's all you do.
And when I read that, I thought, oh my God, that's going to be terrible. But I was thinking it was going to be the front end of Babette's feast before Babette arrived, where the Danes were eating some kind of gruel. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Really good. It doesn't seem, but it's great.
No, but it tastes super nice because it's the fact that it looks terrible. Look at the picture. It looks actually terrible, but it tastes so good, and it's Norway's national dish, actually. And they did a vote. I don't know how many years ago where they asked Norwegian, what is the national dish? And this was actually what was the national dish, and it looks terrible.
Tell people again the name of it.
Hmm?
Tell the name of it.
Fårikål, which is får is sheep or mutton, I is in, and kål is cabbage.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's so it's very descriptive of what it actually is.
Yeah, cool. And then you also had a cured leg of lamb that you were nibbling on. That's kind of like Norwegian prosciutto, right?
Yeah, this was a thing that was back in the 1980s. We had a Norwegian ski champion who was called Vegard Ulvang, who was he was like super famous. He won all the ski competitions internationally. And he was like voted the most sexy male on earth, whatever, in Norway. And he started the whole idea around this cured lamb leg, which is like it's most usual in Italy with the cured hams from pigs, right? That's super, that whole idea. But he just sat and carved this, and it became this big thing in Norway that you were going to sit there and carve the leg of lamb, and it became like the party thing. If you had a party, this was what you ate. You ate it with mayonnaise, with sour cream, with the flatbread, which is a really thin the bread, and you also ate it with also the other cured hams. And the thing was that it was really funny because the guy who actually built up the wool system now in Norway, he traveled to Italy where cured from the hams of the pigs was super big with and he came with this, here we have this cured lamb to Italy, and they were like, this tastes fantastic, and they were like blown away, and this was something totally new that hadn't really happened before.
So do you have a picture of that or not?
Not okay. No, I have to see if I can find it again. There's the sheep. There's the I'm going backwards. This is you see this now?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the backwards of here. Here you see. And that's at the top of the picture. You see the cured.
Oh, it's got its own little stand, like
yeah. So they sell these stands in Norway, so you can actually carve it very easily. So that's become a business, actually.
Wow, it looks delectable. Oh my gosh.
No, it's super nice, and you have some some eggs that you fry up, and some vegetables, and it's like just you sit and eat and eat and eat, and it takes forever, because you have to carve and cut and yeah.
Wow, that looks great. That would be a hit here, I think.
Could I ask what kind of sheep they are that you're growing there? What are the most successful sheep?
Norway has the most industrial sheep the farming is what we call the crossbred sheep, which are the white crossbred sheep, which are the most usual, derived from the British breed. Originally in Norway, we had a dual-coated breed, which is called the spel sheep, because they had short tails. Spel means short tail. They're derived from the Viking sheep, the really old breeds. But
like the Icelandic sheep?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same as the Icelandic sheep. Those sheep were not very, what should we say, conducive for an industry, because the industry likes, you know, a wool that is very same length on the wool, so that the spale sheep disappeared a lot from industrial wool production, except for when it comes to wool that is woven for weaving, mainly, because especially when it comes to the tapestries. The tapestries are very much based on these dual-coated wools, because they have an exceptional sheen, an exceptional durability, and also when it comes to the whole Viking culture, how, excuse me, you Americans, who came to America first? Was it Christopher Columbus, or was it the Vikings?
Viking, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And how did they get there?
In boats.
That was
Boats.
the boats, the open boats with the wool sails and the wool covers. They would not have been able to go to get to America without wool.
Just, pause there for a second. The idea of a wool sail. Talk a little bit about that, like how much wool does it take, and how long did it take to make a Viking sail from wool?
It it takes forever, and I'm sorry, Kip, I'm horrible with numbers, but they've done studies, you know, how long it would take to make a wool sail, to shear the sheep, actually weave the sails and whatever, and it's like man hours. It's like hundreds of man hours to do this. But also they had they sailed in open boats. You know, it would rain, the seawater would come over them, and what they had was they had this thing called a varafel, which is actually a woven textile that sort of replicates a fleece, because you can't use a wool skin, or because then it would rot, because the salt water would rot the skin, right? So they had to replicate the fleece in a way that wasn't a skin. And so they have a weaving technique that is very special, and it's still upheld in both in Iceland and in Norway, where they weave a woven structure, but the wool comes out of it, so it looks like a fleece. But it's not a fleece because it doesn't have the skin on it.
Right.
And this was invented by the Vikings, and that's how they were able to cover themselves, so that, because you know, you all know that wool has this special feature that if it becomes wet, you don't become cold. You'll know that. And you know why?
Why?
Why? It's because wool has air.
That's great. Okay, that's good. And Muffin, I just wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing to preserve the indigenous food culture, basically, and to proselytize with people about it.
Could we back up a minute? And I'd love to ask Tuna a couple more questions. I'm so interested in the attributes of the wool and the history that you've woven. So yeah, when you consider the weight of wet wool, I was thinking, golly, think of the weight of that sail of the Vikings. It would have, if it got in, a North Atlantic storm.
No, but the thing here, Martha, is that these old breeds had a dual outer coat that was like a raincoat.
Oh.
So it actually didn't absorb the moisture.
How fantastic. This is just so interesting. So have the old sheep become, or the formerly used ones, have they become meat sheep as opposed to wool sheep?
All sheep in Norway are now meat sheep. Wool is the secondary product from all the sheep. But we have a very functioning wool system. The government pays subsidies for the wool.
Huh.
They also pay subsidy for the sheep meat.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, it's true in the U.S. too that there's many more meat sheep than wool sheep, but there's a lot that are dual purpose.
Right.
And that's really the secret to making a decent living, is to be able to do both.
Yeah, but the thing here has been that the idea has been that if it's a meat sheep, then you're degrading the quality of the wool. Because the idea is the sort of idea has been that you can't have both. Either you have to address the quality of the meat, which means that the sheep have to be fatter, have more lambs, etc., and that is contrary to the wool. But newer research shows that this isn't right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that I'm asking is because my son in Homer, Alaska, has been raising St. Croix sheep, which for meat in Alaska. That his area is too wet for Icelandic type sheep, apparently. So now he's going to be moving toward, I think he's going to experiment with Romney from the British Isles, which will have what you're saying, like both the wool and the meat. So
but the thing is, like, we have this project now that we just got in Norway called Amazing Grazing, which don't you love that name?
I gotta write it down.
Which is going to look at both the wool and the meat from rangeland grazing, and specifically sheep, and how you can actually tell consumers that, if you are buying products that are contributing to rangeland grazing, you are doing good.
Yeah. The point Tuna is making is that grass-fed sheep actually are carbon negative. Their grazing pulls more carbon out of the atmosphere than they put back through methane, and also in the process of making the wool itself. So when the sheep graze, when they eat the grass, it stimulates the roots to pull more carbon out of the atmosphere. When they eat the grass, the amino acids, they turn it into amino acids that make the fleece, and fleece is about 50% carbon. So a sheep is a carbon sink on 4 hooves.
Yes, you're sequestering carbon, but
when we wear the wool, we're on 2 feet. Wool, no, I mean, replacing synthetic fabrics with wool is one of the key strategies for fighting climate change. Seriously.
Yeah, and the thing is that when we're looking into this area on the global level and discussion when it comes to textiles and fiber, where, for example, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and with their Higg index is trying to tell us that synthetic fibers are a better choice than natural fibers. It's like, hello.
I think it's going to become stigmatic.
yeah,
You go by somebody and you say, yeah, nice oil slick you're wearing.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. You know, fossil fashion. Thank you, not.
You got to make it uncool to wear synthetic fabrics, but they're also not healthy for you. And they produce all kinds of microplastics that end up in the ocean. That's one of the primary sources of microplastics. But some of that microplastics and the toxins that are embedded in them are going through your skin into you. So it's really bad news from a health standpoint. It's bad news from an environmental standpoint. So basically they ought to be banned, really. They ought to all be.
But here again, Kip, we're talking about, power structures.
Yeah. Well,
this goes back to power structures. Who owns the main companies?
right. Yeah, the economy, the carbon economy is not going to die peacefully. We're going to have to fight it.
You know that the Stone Age didn't die because of lack of stone.
Yeah, exactly.
well said.
The carbon economy will die for lack of an atmospheric carbon budget. We just can't afford to put any more carbon in the air. We've got to start taking it out. And grass-fed sheep are one of the ways to do that. When you feed them with grain, it defeats the whole purpose because grain doesn't have that same vital carbon sequestering process as it's grown. So grain-fed sheep, like all the Australian sheep, are not, and that's not a sustainable product. So tell us, Muffin, tell us a little bit about the work you're doing, not just to cook with the foods, but to kind of preserve the knowledge of them and share it with people.
Well, interesting leaping point here is the sustainable growing of not only crops, which I'm seriously interested in, but heirloom breeds. One of the breeds of sheep that were introduced by the Spanish, 300 or 400 years ago into the American Southwest, has proven pretty sustainably to be sustainable. The churro sheep, do you know the churro lamb? It has adapted well to the high plateau, the high desert in Arizona and the Four Corners area, but it also is being used. I actually get my lamb from Sky Island brand. The 47 Ranch is now experimenting with this heritage breed in middle elevation desert. So that's one that you might want to look into for interest's sake. But my passion has been helping people know the desert better instead of fearing it through food, among other things, but teaching people that these foods are so nutritious, they're adapted to desert living. And we think that a lot of the plants that are grown here, not only the cultivated corn, beans, squash, chilies, melons, and so forth that have been traditionally farmed here, but the wild desert plants, trees, legume trees, as well as many other berry plants and foliage plants like like amaranth, which cotton farmers are trying to obliterate and destroy the soil with toxins when they should be just harvesting their weeds, what they call weeds. I don't believe in weeds myself. But the amaranth is so nutritious, it's probably far more just as important as cotton in an arid land. Anyway, so I've been working with Native Seed Search, a seed conservation organization saving ancient crops of the Southwest, but I've also been trying to teach through various organizations, nonprofits like the Tohono O'odham Park and the Mission Garden in Tucson, teach about the wild plants, not only their nutrition, but how and when to harvest, how to cultivate them, how to grow them. We think that they're messages for the rest of the world. As climate changes, there are going to be more and more areas that are desertified, that are become more arid, hotter and drier. And what we know here can be a contribution to other parts of the world as things change. I'm working also with the University of Arizona Desert Laboratory, which is a long-term study plot, a botanical ecological study plot outside of Tucson, Arizona. And they not only have been watching the dynamics of botanical change over the last 100 and something years, 120 years, but they're also looking to the future, and they have a food resilience program to help educate the public, teaching them how to grow their own and how to use the wild desert plants and the cultivated native plants for their own nutrition, for appropriate growing in the arid Southwest.
Hey, so there's this movement nationally, globally, called Fiber Shed, which is that what you wear is made from fiber that was grown sustainably within 150 miles of you. That's the concept of a fiber shed, like a watershed.
Yeah.
And for the Northeast, we've got 30 breeds of dual purpose sheep, amazing, medium and strong wools that can be turned into beautiful clothing. And we have enough rainfall that those sheep can primarily be fed by pasture grazing, right? So it's a sustainable fiber. What would, every fiber shed around the country and around the world is going to be a little different. Not all of them are going to be able to go with just grass-fed wool from grass-fed sheep. So if you were going to try to do that sort of fiber shed in the Southwest, and I know the Southwest is a bunch of different environments, but what would the fibers be? Would they be animal?
There are so many plant fibers. There are, animals as well, but not in such plenty because it takes such a huge area to support an animal unit, as the range people call it. So the plant materials oftentimes are in the lily family or the Asparagaceae, the asparagus family, believe it or not. The century plant that I mentioned to you, you can make mezcal out of when it finally does its blooming cycle and turns its starches to sugars. But the fiber of this long-leafed rosette succulent, the fibers of that are fabulously useful for making twine, for making finer things, making sandals. We find in archaeological sites, we find all sorts of nets, like for trapping rabbits, that kind of thing. Speaking of that, rabbit fur, the jackrabbit and the cottontail have traditionally been made into twisted, fiber, it's used as fiber on a kind of a gross scale, woven as skins. But back to the plant fibers, the yuccas have a very sturdy, wonderful fiber that could be used for something possibly softer than basketry. But the fiber in the century plants, you probably are familiar with the henequen from Mesoamerica, but the century plants that grow around here and could be grown sustainably without additional water, without additional irrigation, can be, the succulent tissue can be scraped off and leaving this silky fiber. And it's being experimented with. It's the same fiber that the Moroccans have made a beautiful, Kip, remember?
Muffin and I were in with a group of people in Morocco almost exactly a year ago, and they made this wonderful silk fabric from agave.
Yeah. Soft and pliable and with a sheen.
Right.
We all put them up, made our headdresses were just delightful. And I'm hopeful that we can bring some Moroccan weavers here and help us develop that as an industry in the desert. It would be so appropriate. I mean, they've done it successfully without an import of agave americana, the century plant from the Americas.
Right. Cool. So, Tuna, tell us a little bit about more about the wool movement in Scandinavia, what you're doing with sustainable fashion and sustainable fiber.
What we have in specifically in Norway is a very strong tradition when it comes to wool. Compared to the other Nordic countries, it's only Iceland that compares to this. And here you see why, because we have to be out in nature. We have to conquer nature. We have to be out in the cold, and for that we need good clothing. So this is our cabin where I'm right now. This is us out skiing today, and this is me skiing today. I'm wearing, as you can see, wool hat and wool mittens. But what you don't probably see is that I'm actually wearing an anorak, which is made from wool.
Wow.
And it's windproof, and it can be slightly waterproof too, but that's the way it's woven. And it's a very specific new technology that has made this possible, so that you don't have to do durable water repellency which is the worst chemicals on earth that are being applied to synthetics to actually be outside. This is from our cabin. This is showing some of the typical wool things that we have. This is our wool duvet covers and pillow covers, which are merino wool based, and my wool nightgown laying there. So we sleep in 100% wool. We also have wool on the mattress, so that we're sleeping on top of wool and in wool. This is from my closet, where you see the sweaters hanging. Very typical Norwegian knitting sweaters. This is a more modern design. This is our underwear that we have to use whenever we go out skiing, and it's always with us. This is from my cousin who made a thing for my 60th birthday, which is a wool skin, where this is very typical Norwegian now, that you're doing these things with the wool skins. My husband bought me for Christmas a spinning wheel, and I haven't used it. But you see my mittens drying from after skiing today, and you see the knitting pattern is based on the spinning mill, which is from northern Norway, where the Sami are very involved in the wool industry. And this is the skins that we have in the house. This is a troll and a sheep on our fireplace. This is you see the wool fabrics all over the place in our cabin, and this is because when you want to feed into the fire, you need a mitten that is proof, that can't burn.
Right.
Because if you have a cotton for this, it can start burning immediately. But wool is super good because it will never take fire, start burning. This is our national costume, which are all based on wool. This is me and my daughter wearing our national costume. Very important for the Norwegian wool industry. This is the basis for a lot of the reason why we've been able to uphold wool industry. This is me back from skiing today, wearing the wool underwear, put on the skirt so that I look sort of semi-decent. This is and this is Ingen and me, who've been writing several books around wool, knitting history, wearing wool. And this is the sheep, the original Viking sheep. Aren't they beautiful? Don't you love them, Martha? They're like super nice. And this is a tunica that actually it came out of a glacier, because all the glaciers are melting now, right? From year 400.
Wow. And it's still.
Yeah.
Still.
So we based the material in this tunica and developed a new material which we call Viking gold, and this is the coat that we developed from this.
One thing, an interjection here, is that when you use the medium and coarse wools, like I think the Norwegian wools and the North American wools, versus the fine soft wools of Australia, the merino. The problem with merino is that it's just not very durable.
No. You get holes all the time on
if they had merino wool in the year 400 and lost it in the glacier, you wouldn't have it today.
No, probably not.
Medium
But
last forever. I mean, they're heirlooms. They last more than a human lifetime. That's when you finally get tired of it, can't stand it anymore, you put it into the ground, then it turns into soil.
Yeah.
Not like a toxic, synthetic garment, which would take, it would still be here from the year 400, but for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't biodegrade.
And this, by the way, is a Sami girl who took upon herself to sew her own dresses, and this is a very traditional Sami way of dressing, and you see how it's all wool based, and she's a super girl, and she's just she uses Instagram a lot to express how she's sewing these things and developing it, and a really nice girl. And this is me. I'm 2 years old. That's me in the middle. That's my mom and dad. And this is the cover of our history of Norwegian knitting. And as you see, this is the very traditional Norwegian knits, which is sort of what defines us in a way.
Wow, cool. Right.
Okay.
Good. All right, so this has been fun. It's really great having the two of you, and it's always been my dream to bring people together, really interesting people who don't know each other around food. I actually thought it would be around my table in my house, and people that could meet, find common connection, change the world, whatever. So the now not hidden mission of the lampstand is to do that virtually now, but ultimately, you know, in real space where people can interact. Not just to be an employee canteen, but to be people who are concerned about what's happening with the climate and want to do something about it, whether it's sustainable or realm like sustainable food. So stay tuned. We're going to have the next cooking video. I shot it yesterday. Is Armenian lamb shanks, which I served over polenta with broccoli rabe. So it's kind of an Armenian Italian fusion. And I got the recipe from my Armenian acupuncturist. And it was her family recipe, and it's really kind of interesting because it has no quantity, you know, like a lot of family recipes. So I had to kind of figure it out. It was an adventure. And then we'll take a while to edit it, put it up, and then we'll have the next, the third virtual table with some guests about that, including the two farmers. Well, Angie Brenner, who Muffin knows from our she's going to join us. She's a cookbook author, really knows Turkish food, but also Armenian. And then these two young farmers, Siri Swanson and Colin Sigmund, who run Yankee Rock Farm, where that's where I got the lamb shanks from. But we're going to have actually farmers at the next virtual lunch, which are dual use farmers, and we want to celebrate the farmer, the lamb, the farmer, the wool, the whole thing. So come join us on March 21st. And again, thanks. This is great. Thank you, Tuna, and thank you, Muffin. It's wonderful.
I'd like to thank you all. I just feel so privileged and honored to be in your company and learning from you both. I'd also like to invite you to visit a blog that I do with a couple of other Southwestern foodies. It's called savorthesouthwest.blog.
And Muffin, send me some of those links in the books. We'll put it on the website because we have the recipe on the website. We'll have a tape of this on the website, so I can put some of those links up that you talked about. Same with you tonight. If you have things you want to share that way. Great.
I will.
So,
Super.
So much.
Yeah. Shut us down.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So appreciate
Bye.
it. Bye-bye.